We have been married for almost 2 wonderful years. My name is Peter, and my wife's name is Janet. I first met her 18 months before we got married. My wife had more than 2 lovers before we met. She was much more experienced than me in sex. When we met, I immediately fell in love with her. 3 short months later, I said, "Will you marry me?" Much to my surprise, Janet said yes and kissed me. A short time later, I met her parents. They were in seventh heaven. Within minutes, I got along with her father. We turned out to have common interests. The parents were so pleased that they scheduled the wedding in 12 months. Soon after, she met my parents. They were also in seventh heaven. God, she was so much better in bed than I was. Once a week, I met with friends. Janet did the same with her friends. One evening, I told them, "Next year, I'm marrying Janet." My 2 friends were stunned. We met up with friends again closer to the wedding day. They kept saying the same thing. "Don't marry her. She'll take her panties off for anyone," they said. I didn't pay attention, thinking that they were just jealous and wanted to take my girl for themselves. They continued to repeat this until the bachelor party. The wedding day arrived and we got married. Then we moved to a rented house. After the wedding, we still had separate evenings with friends. Most of her friends were already married, and 2 of them were pregnant. They became housewives who could not afford to go out once a week because there was not enough money. However, one of them was still free. It was these 2 friends who went to the bachelorette parties. I went out that evening to meet the only one of my friends who was not yet married. 12 months later, Janet saw her friend's children. Now she started talking about how it was time for us to have 1 or 2 children. She stopped taking the pills, and we started trying to have a baby. 6 months passed, but Janet showed no signs of pregnancy. Looks like one of us had a problem. I didn't discuss it with her. I went to the doctor to find out if it was me. I took the test. It was awkward, to say the least. Then the results came. God, I was so upset. It turned out that I cannot have children. I was shocked and was examined in 3 other hospitals. They all said the same thing. I asked to see the head of the department. I had several questions. First, what caused my infertility? Second, how can I improve the quality? Third, why can't I conceive a child? He explained that the reasons for my infertility were the following factors. Firstly, even at birth, I had problems. Secondly, I suffered from mumps in early childhood. And finally, the accident I had 4 years ago did not improve the situation either. It was the combination of these 3 factors that caused my infertility. All tests took more than 4 long months. I had to come to terms with the problem. What will I tell Janet? No, I didn't tell her for a while. While the tests were taking place, we had a good sex life 3 to 4 times a night. We still hoped that the test results were wrong. In the evenings, I sat looking at her. I knew she wanted children as much as I did. When Janet wasn't home, she was at her mother's or at bachelorette parties. Over the last few months, I've stopped going to bachelor parties. Finally, the tests are over. They didn't do any good. I was trying to figure out how to tell her that I couldn't give her children. And then a thought came to me. It now comes out not twice a week, but 3. Over the past few months, I haven't even noticed it. Now it was published on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On Mondays and Wednesdays, she returned home by 10 in the evening. But on Fridays later, since she had a bachelorette party. On Fridays, she always returned a little later. And our sex life gradually faded away. I chalked it up to my struggles with infertility. On Monday evening, she got ready to go out and dressed, as if she was going to spend the evening at a club. I thought she was going out with a friend. I tried to watch the movie and looked at my watch. It was approaching 10 in the evening. She should be back soon. She was late. She was in a good mood, and we went to bed. But there was no sex. On Tuesday night, we had sex, but not like before, and I didn't understand why. On Wednesday evening, she got ready to go out again, and again dressed as if she was going to spend the evening at a club. I thought she was going out with a friend. I tried to watch the movie and looked at my watch. It was approaching 10 in the evening. She should be back soon. She was late, and again there was no sex. On Thursday night, I was hoping for good sex, but there was none. On Friday evening, Janet got ready to go out again, and again dressed as if she was going to spend the evening at a club with a friend. I sat and thought. Something was wrong in our sex life. She was fading away. I started to think about it more seriously, and then it dawned on me. She is cheating on me, but with whom? I hoped it wasn't with someone I knew. If it was someone I knew, I would have killed him. I sat and watched the TV, being in my own world. Time passed slowly that Friday evening. I sat waiting for her to come home. She returned an hour later and was in high spirits. "Did you have a good evening?" I asked. "We had a great time," she replied. We went upstairs, and she changed into clean underwear. There was no sex. She fell asleep. I went to the laundry basket and took her panties. My suspicions were confirmed. On Monday, I hired a private investigator and told him what was going on. I told him that she was cheating on me. I gave him the number and color of her car and her photo. He got down to business that same day. "Sir, I will give you an account of what happened this Saturday," he said. Yes, she was happy when she returned home those 3 evenings. Our sex became less and less frequent. On Saturday, I went to the private investigator's office. "Sir, it looks like your wife is cheating on you," he said. "Do you know this man's name and address?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Sir, what I am about to say will shock you," he said. "This is one of your friends." I knew it had to be one of them, but who exactly? I asked. "Sir, your wife is dating not one, but 3 men these evenings," he said. My jaw dropped. I leaned over to his desk and exclaimed, "You said 3 men?" "Sorry, but you must have been following the wrong woman," I said. He expected me to say that. Then he showed me photographs of my wife. She was entering the hotel. The photo showed the time and date. A few more pictures of her coming out. "Sir, we have checked with the hotel. Your wife has been coming there for the last 3 months on every one of these nights," he said. I sat in silence, processing what I had just heard. Then there was a pause. "Sir, would you like me to continue?" he asked. I looked at him. "I need to know the truth, no matter how hard it is," I said. There was a pause again. "Since she is using the same hotel and room, we can install cameras in the room," he said. "We can record up to 8 hours of video, with time and date stamped on the screen," he added. "Yes, go ahead," I said. "I will prepare a full report in the next 2 weeks. Can you come pick him up in 2 weeks?" "Yes." I left the office. My head was spinning from what was happening. She has been dating 3 men for the past 3 months. I needed to pull myself together. As my mind wandered, I remembered his words again and again. She has dated 3 men in the last 3 months. I returned home to a rented house. I was beside myself with rage. I don't know how I managed to contain my anger while pretending nothing had happened. We had sex on Sunday night, but it was a weak show of love on her part. For the next 2 weeks, she continued to do the same. I was filled with rage, anger, and hatred. I didn't know what was true and what wasn't. On Saturday, I went to the private investigator's office for a full report on the last 2 weeks. "Sir, I must confirm that it is your wife we have been following," he said. "I will show you a photograph that may upset you, taken on each of these 3 evenings. Sir, here are photographs of her entering and leaving the hotel with the time and date for each of the 3 evenings. Sir, these 3 photographs may upset you," he added. "Sir, there is something else I need to tell you," he said. "What is this?" I asked. There was a pause. "One of the men is black," he said. "Black? Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "This is the one she used to date on Fridays," he added. "I'm really sorry. I understand what's going through your head right now," he said. My head was spinning. I was beside myself. A few minutes later, I asked for the bill. He gave me all the DVDs, photographs, and the report he compiled. I had to go to my father to ask for money to pay the bill. My father gave me money without asking anything. I went to the bar and had a few drinks to clear my head, and then returned home. Over the past few weeks, I've been too busy thinking about Janet to notice that she's started throwing up in the morning. On Monday, she was going to the doctor. When she returned home in the evening, she ran up to me shouting, "I have great news." "And which ones?" I asked. "We will become parents," she shouted joyfully. I smiled, pretending to be happy, knowing that the child was not mine. Janet spent the next few hours on the phone telling everyone her news. I didn't stop her from leaving the house. I sat and wondered what to do next. I decided to keep the child if he turns out to be white. If he turns out to be black, it's a scam. If the child is white, I am ready to recognize him as mine for the sake of love for her. Yes, our parents were in seventh heaven. Both of our parents bought everything they needed for their future grandson. Janet didn't know she was going to have 2 children, and neither did I. I was living a lie. Janet still went out on the same days. After 2 months, she stopped going out, probably because sex became uncomfortable for her. 2 weeks before my expected due date, I found a divorce lawyer. I told him the whole story of what Jane did. I handed over to the lawyer all the materials received from the private detective. I asked a lawyer to prepare divorce papers in case of need. I was still ready to accept the white child as mine. I went to my parents and talked to my father. He was a calm and understanding person. I knew that my father had helped some people in the past. I came to my parents. "Dad, would you like to have a drink with me at the pub?" "Go get a drink. You two haven't sat together for a long time," Mom said. We headed to the pub, which was around the corner. "Dad, I don't want to drink," I said. "I want to tell you something." We found a bench and sat down. "Dad, please let me speak. Don't interrupt me. It will be hard to say this to you." "Yes, son. I don't know where to start." "Peter, start from the beginning and don't leave anything out," said the father. With a big lump in my throat, I started saying, "Dad, she's been cheating on me for 11 months. "Dad, the child is not mine. I'm barren," I said. I lowered my head, covering my face with my hands. My father hugged me. "Son, can I tell you?" he asked. "Of course, Dad," I replied. "Son, how do you know she's cheating on you? And how do you know that you are infertile?" asked the father. "Dad, I hired a private investigator for 3 weeks to check on her. I have evidence. Everything has been handed over to the divorce lawyer. Dad, the money that I asked you for a few months ago, it went to pay for the detective's services. Dad, I made a decision, and you may not like it. If the child is white, I intend to raise him as my own for her sake, not for my own sake, because I love her very much." "I understand you," said the father. "Dad, but if he's black?" "Yes, Dad, black. I will file for divorce if the papers are ready." "Peter, what makes you think the baby could be black?" "She cheated on me with a black man on Fridays. When you and Mom are at the hospital, if he's white, then everything is fine. But if he's black, I'll ask you to leave and take your mom with you." "Sorry, Dad, but you'll have to explain everything to Mom." "Yes, let's wait and see," said the father. She started giving birth. I spent 12 hours in the hospital waiting to give birth. I sent for both parents. They were sitting in the waiting room, ready to celebrate the birth of our first grandchild. I was in the delivery room. The child was a white girl. Then a second child was due to be born. The hospital staff looked at each other. They looked after the baby. It was a black boy. Hospital staff handed the girl over to her. Then a black boy. "This is not mine. Where is my other child?" she said. "This is your baby. Ask your husband. He was here the whole time you were giving birth," the employee said. Janet just looked at me. She knew that our marriage was over then. Now I looked at her with hatred. "Janet, I know this is not the right time, but I am divorcing you." "The divorce papers will be here tomorrow," I said. I turned around and left the room. I went to the waiting room to tell her grandparents. "Janet can't see anyone right now," the doctor said. "She's having a girl and a boy," I said. My mother jumped up and ran to Janet's mother, who was jumping for joy. I walked up to my father and whispered in his ear. "White girl, black boy, take mommy home," I said. My mom and dad left the waiting room. I had no idea what dad was going to tell mom over the next hour or so. I had to tell Janet's parents, and it would be difficult. I looked at them both, taking a deep breath. You can both come in now, I said. What about your parents? They said. I looked at them. They had no idea what awaited them. Please listen to me before you see her. Yes, what is Peter? They said. Please sit down. What I am about to tell you will shock both of you. Sorry, I'm divorcing her as soon as possible. Janet's children are not mine. She's been cheating for months. I don't know who the white girl belongs to either, and I have no idea who the black boy belongs to. Peter, did you just say black boy? They said. That's right, you have a white granddaughter and a black grandson, I said. They didn't say anything. She cheats every Friday night. Janet is a woman of easy virtue. Sorry, you'll have to keep an eye on her from now on. The next time I see Janet will be in court. I'll bring all her clothes to your house. And all the baby clothes tomorrow. I'm leaving now, I said. The next day, the divorce papers were served. I took all her clothes, baby furniture, and baby stuff to her parents. Her parents wanted to talk to me. I didn't give it up. She signed divorce papers that same day. I was waiting for the divorce to take place. I went to my parents' house, and my mother asked me to tell her everything. Tell me, said Mom. Mom, if I tell you, it will only upset you. I'm your mother. Nothing in the world will upset me. Peter, will you tell me everything? Said Mom. Mom, are you sure? Mom, this will only make you very sad. Peter, tell me now. Mom, I'm infertile. I'm infertile, unable to have children. I was born with this problem, according to 4 different doctors I've seen. I had mumps when I was very young. If you remember, I also had an accident that didn't help. What hurts me so much that I can't pass on the name Williams, it's all because of my problem. She started going out 3 nights a week. She said she was going to her mother's 2 nights a week. I thought she was going out with a friend. She told me on Friday that she was at a bachelorette party. Mom, she lied to me. Mom, can I stop? No, tell me. Then everything changed. Then I noticed that she was getting dressed for a night out on the town. Our sex life went downhill fast. When she got home, she changed her underwear. I checked her underwear. So I hired a detective for 3 weeks. He gave me all the evidence that she was fooling around. I have photographs, notes, and a full written report. I gave the originals to my divorce lawyer. He was the one who served her with the divorce papers. I think that's all you need to know at the moment, I said. Peter, I said I want you to tell me everything. Mom, the rest will upset you. Peter, that's enough, Mom said. Dad gives Mom a strong drink. I drank too. She cheated with 3 men, I have proof, but I don't know if there was anyone else. She saw 1 man on Monday and another man on Wednesday. Mom, do you want to know the rest? Peter, go with the rest. Yes, Mom. She was with a black man on Friday nights, I said. Mom drank heavily and was silent for some time. That's why you didn't want me to see the black child at the hospital, Mom said. Yes, Mother. Mom, she was served with divorce papers, I said. Peter, what are you going to do now? Mom, I will divorce as quickly as possible. Dad can help me with money to pay the lawyer fees, I said. Yes, son, said Dad. Months passed. It's time to review all the information from the detective. Then I took the recording from Monday night and pressed play. I took 2 cans of beer from the refrigerator. Then I turned on the recording of Wednesday night and pressed play. I stopped the recording and finished the last can of beer. To hell with it, I said. I grabbed a few more beers from the refrigerator, sat down on the couch, and reluctantly turned on the recording of Friday night. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to see her with a black man, but something inside me made me press play. Mr. Friday appeared in the hotel room. He was a tall, well-built, and attractive man. I remembered what we talked to her when she returned home. "Did you have a good evening?" I asked. "What a great time we had," she said. Then her lawyer asked for a meeting. I agreed, even though it was the first time I had met Janet since she gave birth. At the meeting, her lawyer, whom I will call JS, and my lawyer, whom I will call MS, began a discussion. "We are faced with a very unusual case," Jays began. "First, Janet wants child support for both children." "No," answered MS. "On what basis?" asked JS. "On the basis of treason," answered MS. "Can you explain how my client gave birth to a black baby?" is asked. "We researched my client's genealogy and found that she had black blood in her family," Jays said. "The black boy is a genetic relapse that explains his appearance," he added. "Can I say a few words?" I asked. "Mr. Williams, no, I'm only here to protect your interests," Ims replied. "If you don't mind, I'll talk," he added. "So you're saying it's a genetic relapse," clarified. "Yes, and our evidence will stand up to scrutiny in court," JS replied. "Just a minute, please. I would like to consult with my client," is said. "Mr. Williams, do you want me to tell them everything now?" asked Miss. "Yes," I answered. My lawyer opened his case and took out copies of all my medical documents. He gave them to Janet's lawyer. "There will be no alimony support, and the divorce should be finalized as quickly as possible," my lawyer said. Janet's lawyer read my medical records. "My client is infertile. He can't have children," my lawyer said. "This is impossible. These children are his," Janet screamed. Her lawyer looked first at me and then at her. "We have nothing more to say," Janet's lawyer said. "Sorry, but I have something else to add," my lawyer replied. He pulled out 3 more documents from his briefcase and handed them to Janet's lawyer for review. "My client is requesting DNA tests on these 3 men," he said, "and then compare the results with the DNA of the 2 children Mrs. Williams gave birth to. Here are their names, addresses, and phone numbers," he added. "All 3 are married and have children." "We demand immediate tests," my lawyer emphasized. "Here is our official request. I hope you will do the same," he added. "If the tests are negative, then my client will pay the costs. If they are positive, then your client will bear all the costs," he continued. "I assume that your client agrees to the tests," my lawyer concluded. Janet's lawyer handed her 3 documents to read. I watched her reaction carefully. Her eyes widened and her mouth dropped open in shock. Then she nodded to her lawyer. "I will send you copies of the DNA tests as soon as they are ready, and we will arrange another meeting," my lawyer said. A month has passed. I brought a small package with me. We met at Janet's lawyer's office. Both lawyers discussed legal technicalities that I did not understand. The fathers of both children were identified. Mr. Wednesday turned out to be the father of a white girl, and Mr. Friday turned out to be the father of a black boy, which is not surprising. "How could I get pregnant with 2 children at the same time?" Janet asked. Her lawyer tried to explain that this was a rare but possible case. "We have a medical expert on staff who will explain all the details to you after this meeting," Janet's lawyer added. "Divorce and no alimony support," my lawyer said. "I believe that you will deal with this issue separately," he concluded. The meeting ended and I walked up to Janet. I handed her a small package and said quietly, "I saw a black man recently, right?" She looked at me and I saw hatred in her eyes. I went to meet my friends, the same ones who tried to warn me against marrying Janet. "Don't marry her," they said. "She'll take her panties off for anyone." I admitted that they were right. "How did you know that the children were not yours?" they asked. "It wasn't difficult at all because I'm infertile and can't have children," I replied. "Now you can go and have sex with anyone without worry," one said. "I haven't thought about it," I admitted. "You have a license to cheat, you lucky guy," they joke. I sold all the things in the house, including some that belonged only to her. I made 2 lists, one with her things and the other with our common ones. I sold her things at full price and divided the money from the sale of our common things in half. I went to Janet's parents and knocked on the door. Her father opened the door and looked at me. "Peter, come in," he said. I refused. I noticed that his face had changed since our last meeting. It was filled with anxiety and disbelief. "Yes, Peter, in that case, what do you need?" he asked. "Sir, I sold all the things that belonged to Janet," I said. "This is her share, and I divided the rest of the money in half," I added. Janet's mother approached the door, her face also showing concern. "I'm sorry for everything that happened, but it's not my fault," I said, turned around and left. I asked my parents to let me return home because I could no longer live in the rented house. I returned to them, and my life gradually began to improve. As you remember, my father is a calm and understanding person who never spoke ill of others. I knew he had been friends with some cool guys in the past. The father gave them several good offices. Unknown to me, he decided to punish the 3 men Janet cheated on me with. Mr. Monday was the first to be beaten. He moved to another place, but was found. He was already divorced. He was told that if he did not leave the city, things would get worse. Mr. Wednesday was also found. He was married and became the father of a white girl. He was also ordered to leave the city, otherwise even worse would await him. Mr. Friday also got his. This is how I learned that 3 men received their punishment due to the actions of my father. I went to my dad's local pub for a drink. My father was sitting with 3 men I had never seen before. I sat down next to my father. "These are my old friends," he said. They didn't look like old friends. Whatever they were talking about, the conversation was over. One of the men turned to my father. "The debt is paid," he said. His father smiled at him. "Thank you very much. Everything is paid for," said the father. The men left. "Justice has been served for you, son," the father said. It was then that I realized that all 3 men had been punished. I was shocked but pleased. "Dad, did you leave Janet alone?" I asked. "Yes, son," he replied. Years later, I followed her. Over time, she destroyed herself. 2 children became adults, her parents died, and she lived in her parents' house. She cheated on me all these years. Sometimes I wonder if she cheated on me in the first 2 years of our marriage. I'm betting yes. I accidentally found out what she had been doing lately. She cheated not with 1 man, but with 2, 3, 4. In general, she was addicted to sex. I'm glad I divorced her many years ago. As for me, if I told you about all my sexual experiences with young and older women, you would not believe me. My sexual experiences over the years would give you many amazing stories to witness. I had a good sex life because of what Janet gave me during those 2 years of marriage. But I always remember those words when she returned home. We're going to be parents soon. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.